Hola! Alright, in this vlog, I am going to talk about my first hospital experience following my AML diagnosis. I was admitted to the hospital May 17th of 2017. This was one day after I was officially diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. I was admitted that day, and they didn't do much really that first day. They just, did all of my questions and kind of just prepared me for what's going to come the next few days and the next, little while as far as treatment goes. The following day, on May 18th, they took me into surgery, and I was put under just, light general anesthesia, and they surgically put in a port. Now, for those of you who don't know, a port is a device, I guess it's called a catheter, I'm not sure what you want to call it, but it's this plastic piece and it has this long tail on it, and it is what they use to put in your chemo, to give you blood transfusions, to give you fluids, to draw blood, all that stuff. I try to draw a picture of one here just to kind of give you a visual. Mine is, I have a double lumen power port, so there are two little lumens is what they're called. Some people's port only has one lumen, but the one they put in for me, for some reason they put in a double, so mine has the two little lumens there. And on each lumen there's three little nubbies that stick up and that you can actually feel. And the nurses will feel for those little nubbies, and they will stick this special needle. I cannot think of what kind of needle it is that they use. There's a special name for it, but it's a special needle that they use, and they stick it in between the nubbies to access your port. So the port is under your skin. Most people have it in their chest. And then this tail, this catheter here, it goes into a large vein, and then this tip here, it rests close to your heart. So it can get blood flow in, and, like I said, they can draw blood and all that good stuff and administer your medicine through this. You can kind of see my scar a little bit here on camera. Right there's my scar, and you can kind of see too my actual port. It sticks up here from my skin, like under my skin. A lot of people's do stick up like that. It's just kind of the way that they're made, and then they can feel for the nubbies and then stick that special needle in there to access the port. Like I said, I got this put in May 18th, and this is what it looks like now, the beginning part of February of 2018. So I've had it for a little bit less than a year, and I hate it. I hate my port so much. It just bothers me when people are messing with it and pressing around on it, and I really hate having it accessed. It's not that it really hurts, it's just a total mental thing for me. I don't know what it is. I'm just a little crazy, I guess. But I always have to put the special numbing cream on it just to try to desensitize that whole area, because I hate having it messed with. But saying that, this port has done a lot of good for me, and it has served me well. It saved me a lot from having to get IVs put in and having to get needle sticks in my arms and just things like that. So even though it's a good thing. And I've had it for this long, but there's not really any immediate plans of having it taken out. Some people have their ports for years after their treatments, and kind of just as kind of a security blanket, just in case something were to ever go wrong. And it does make having blood drawn easier, just because, there's a port, you can just pop the needle right in there and get your blood out. So there's that port was put in on the 18th, like I said. And then May 19th, the very next day, is when my chemo was started. Now for me, it's called Induction chemo. and it's also called 7+3. So I had 2 different chemos. I had 7 days straight of a chemo called cytarabine, and then I also had 3 days straight, 3 consecutive days of a chemo called daunorubicin. So the daunorubicin, they injected it through, they used a syringe to inject it. They put it in through my port. And the nurse like would push the chemo like really slowly through the syringe. So it was like, I guess hand, I don't know what the term for that is, but I guess like hand pushed or whatever. But they did that, the daunorubicin, on day 1, day 2, and day 3. And then all 7 days, I had cytarabine. And cytarabine, the delivery was a little bit different. It was IV bag of medicine, and they had my port accessed. So the cytarabine was put in through my port, and I got that. It was 24 hours straight. Each bag lasted 24 hours, and then once it emptied, I would get my new bag. And it did that for 7 straight days. And that was my induction chemo. I never have had to have radiation, luckily, only chemotherapy. Um, and the chemotherapy, the induction chemo that I had, put me into remission. It wiped out my AML, also wiped out all of my other blood cells completely, but I mean, that's expected, and that's what the chemo is supposed to do. But it did, it worked well, and I found out on June 6th that I was in complete remission, so that was awesome. But the chemo, whenever you think chemo, you just think of people losing their hair, and then people, being really sick, like very stomach sick and throwing up and things like that. Of course, I did lose my hair. Started losing my hair maybe maybe a week, not quite a week, after I finished my chemo. So it didn't fall out immediately, it didn't fall out after my first bag of chemo or anything like that. It took a little while. I did lose, my hair, but somehow I did not lose my eyebrows, and I did not lose my eyelashes throughout all of my chemo. They thinned out, but they're still there. So those are my eyebrows, and my eyelashes are the real champions here. They stuck with me through it all somehow. But I lost my head hair. Like I said, almost a week after completing chemo. But I didn't get very stomach sick as far as throwing up. I may have thrown up just a couple of times, but the nurses, they really do stay on top of it, and they give you preventative nausea medicines, and then if those don't quite work, they'll give you additional nausea medicines, and there's several different kinds of medicines that they have in the arsenal. So if one doesn't work, then you can try another one, or try another one, until you find one that works good for you. But I did get sick as far as my esophagus, like my whole esophagus, all the way down to my stomach. It almost felt like really severe heartburn or acid reflux, but it was just terrible the whole way down. And I wasn't able to eat, and I wasn't really able to drink much. It just hurt so bad. And that started while I was still getting chemo. So I would say that started maybe day 3 or day 4 of my 7 days of cytarabine. So it was hurtful. It did not feel good at all. But the pain did eventually go away once the chemo ended. And the reason for that is because, chemo, its purpose is to kill rapidly dividing cells. So that's why we lose our hair. That's why people sometimes get mouth sores. things like that. That's why I was having the issues with my esophagus and my stomach, because all of those things, the cells in those areas are rapidly dividing. So the chemo targets those unintentionally. Obviously the chemo does not know the difference between a cancer cell and a healthy cell. It gets all of them. So unfortunately, those are why we have it's why we have the I don't know if you want to call them side effects or what, but we have those issues from the chemo. In addition to the heartburn pain that I had, I did get a couple of gastrointestinal infections, and from those before they were really found, I was having high fevers, and I mostly had the fevers at nighttime, and we kind of found out what was going on as far as the infections go, because I was only having them at night after I would eat dinner, and it kind of found out that the food that I was eating was somehow contributing to the fevers. And the fevers were pretty bad. One of the fevers in particular, I remember I was having delusions, and I thought that I was in the wrong room, and somehow I was in the wrong hospital bed, and I thought that I don't know, it was just crazy, but it was from the fever. And I was so weak during that time, I couldn't walk, and they took all of your blankets away. Whenever you get a fever, they just trying to cool you down as fast as possible, so they put cold packs on you and give you a sheet, and that's about it, and it's just miserable. But once they found out about the infections, then that stopped the fevers, because they were able to give me antibiotics and things like that to address the issues I was having. So that took care of that. I was really tired after the chemo, because the chemo, it wipes out all of your cells, wipes out your white cells, your red cells, drops your platelets down, it wipes your marrow out completely, so you just don't have anything to really make those, blood cells. I did have to get many transfusions while I was in the hospital. I have it here. I got 12 blood transfusions and 9 bags of platelets, so 9 platelet transfusions, while I was in the hospital during that month period. I also had trouble there right after my chemo. I had the most trouble with this. As time passed, it started to get better, but my memory was just terrible. Right after I got chemo, there would be days that went by that I just, I don't remember. And still, even, this far out from having that initial chemo, I still don't really remember those days at all. I would watch TV and not remember what I just saw. My aunts would talk to me about the TV show we're watching, and I just had no idea, what I had just seen. It was bizarre, but like I said, that did eventually correct itself. It just was kind of troubling there in the moment. I did have trouble eating, because I just, with the esophagus problem for sure, I don't think I ate hardly at all during that time. And then also, your taste buds get all weird whenever you have chemo, and then, things just don't taste right, and it makes food almost repulsive. And then the hospital food there at the first hospital I was at, it was not good, and I had a lot of trouble eating, so I mostly kind of stuck to eating cereal, because that was just something that I actually was able to eat, but there was that. But I was in the hospital for a month, from May 17th until June 20th of last year of 2017. It was a long time. like, it was, I don't know how to properly explain this because it was a long time, but also it didn't seem like that long, because if you think about it, that's a whole month that I was stuck in there. But while I was doing it, I mean, yeah, it really was not fun being in there, but a month I was in there, like, that's crazy to me. It didn't seem like a month that I was in there, which I guess is a blessing, that I wasn't just completely miserable, in pain and, all that bad stuff. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I watched TV a lot, even though I wasn't really soaking it in. It just kind of was a noisemaker and kind of just something on. Um, I got a lot of adult coloring books. People gave me a lot of those and a lot of markers and pencils and things like that. So I colored a lot. Same with puzzle books and stuff. People gave me a lot of crossword puzzles and things like that to do, which was really, really nice. I listen to my music a lot, which that's always kind of been a coping mechanism for me. I love music of all kinds, and it was nice to be able to have that and to have a private room where I'm able to just have my alone time and listen to my music. And then more than anything, I slept a lot. Like I said before, I was really tired, just had no energy and no strength, really. My doctor would always get on to me because every day when he would come visit, I was always in my hospital bed, just because I just didn't feel like doing anything else. I just went through this like horrible experience and whatnot, and it's just I didn't want to do anything except for sleep, and I was having trouble sleeping at night, so I would oftentimes kind of just like sleep during the day to kind of make up for all that lost sleep. So I think that pretty much sums it up as far as like what I did in the hospital. I did have 2 bone marrow biopsies while I was admitted that first hospital stay. The first bone marrow biopsy was, forgive me, I have to think here. I think it was 7 days after I completed my first chemo. Or maybe, oh shoot, I can't remember now. That's terrible. I know I had one shortly thereafter completing chemo. And from that bone marrow biopsy is how they found out that I was in remission. It came back showing that I had less than 1% blasts. And if you'll remember from my previous video, I talked about how at diagnosis I had 38% blasts in my marrow. So went from 38% down to less than 1%. So that was absolutely incredible. So that was that first biopsy. And then the second biopsy was a couple of weeks later, maybe 2 weeks later. The doctor wanted to do another biopsy just to, I guess, kind of confirm the results of the first one, to kind of corroborate those results and make sure that, it's still accurate and that I'm still in remission. That wasn't just like a fluke. So they did that while I was inpatient. And then that's pretty much it as far as, tests and things. They did blood work every morning. They would draw blood out of my port line. And yeah, that's it. I didn't have to get any other chemos after that first round there in the hospital for my first day. Of course, had other chemos later on, but for this first hospitalization, I only had to do the induction chemo at that time. I don't know what else to say about it. I did have a fair bit, it's more than a fair bit. I pretty crippling anxiety, I'll just be honest, prior to my discharge. I don't know why. It just once I found out that my ANC, that my neutrophil count was high enough for me to be released from the hospital, I just absolutely had a meltdown. Like I had a nervous breakdown almost. I couldn't, I was gonna have a panic attack. I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I just was crying, and the nurse was, trying to comfort me and assure me that everything was going to be okay, but I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's just that I got so used to having these nurses around in case something bad happened, or what, but I just was so afraid to go home. And I love my home. This is my favorite place in the whole world, but I just was so scared. And it didn't take, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. It took me a while to like calm down and be okay with being discharged. And then, once I got home, those feelings went away. I was, comfortable and happy to be home and everything. I think it was just that I was so used to being in this like isolated room and having, people check on me all the time, and then to go, home and then not have anybody here, it just was scary to me. But I got over it. Well, that's pretty much it, I think, for my first hospital stay. The next thing that happened in my world was I went to have my first meeting with my bone marrow transplant doctor. At the time, I didn't know if I would be going down the transplant route or if I would be going down what's called consolidation chemo. There's two different routes you can do, once you've completed your induction chemo and once you are in remission. And at that time, I didn't know which one it was going to be. So soon after my discharge from the hospital, I had my first meeting with the transplant doctor to talk about what my options were and to talk about what he thought would be best for me and for my case. So I guess that's what I'll make my next vlog about. I'll kind of do like an intro to my whole transplant experience. I guess you all can kind of guess what route I ended up taking, since I've talked about having my transplant and whatnot a little bit. But yeah, so I'll talk about that a little bit in my next vlog, and maybe I'll talk about the second stay in the hospital that I had. So yeah, I'll wrap this up, and as always, if you guys have questions, let me know, and I will see you all soon.